We weren't really friendly. We used to see them every once in a while, like here or in town. Did he have no history, did he? Did he have any history of heart disease or anything?
What I wanted to tell you is we are in the process of
Okay.
and part of that is a new camera that will be lower than that one so that you won't have to see
Okay.
and
Because I also have an excellent IT person who works for me. He doesn't work for me. He does my home. He did my son's homes. So if you ever need him, he works privately. He works for a big construction company, but he also does this too. He works with, because you get all the work in the Ritz where I live, for the developer. Yeah, we live in the Ritz. Leanne and I live in the Ritz. Oh, okay. Yeah, I know it. We go to that restaurant down the street. The
Italian one.
Sorry to intrude. I think we probably should get this fired up.
Okay.
Nice to see you. Shabbat shalom.
Good to see you.
Yeah.
So good to see you. Well, we're
Nice to
neighbors.
be your neighbor. I walked yesterday with Rabbi Creditor.
Oh.
Yeah, we became friendly
That's so
because I go Diane and I every morning are online with him.
That's really nice.
So we became friendly with
Well,
him and
next
his
time you
wife.
see him,
I will.
I wanted.
הנה מה טוב ומה נעים, שבת אחים גם יחד. הנה מה טוב ומה נעים, שבת אחים גם יחד. הנה מה טוב ומה נעים, שבת אחים גם יחד. הנה מה טוב ומה נעים, שבת אחים גם יחד. הנה מה טוב ומה נעים, שבת אחים גם יחד. הנה מה טוב ומה נעים, שבת אחים גם יחד. הנה מה טוב ומה נעים, שבת אחים גם יחד. הנה מה טוב ומה נעים, שבת אחים גם יחד. הנה מה טוב ומה נעים, שבת אחים גם יחד, הנה מה טוב ומה נעים, שבת אחים גם יחד.
Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom.
It is really, really nice to be able to be back together again here in our sanctuary at Westchester Reform Temple for our Shabbat Evening Service. I'm Rabbi Daniel Reeser. This is Cantor Danielle Rudnizky. And we, of course, wish Shabbat Shalom not just to those who join us here in the sanctuary, not just to those who join us via any of our live streaming platforms, but also to our families who are joining us here via Zoom for a very special part of our service this evening. We want to go ahead and acknowledge up front that we're sort of like high-tech, low-tech tonight. So we really appreciate, I know that people on Zoom can't see people in the sanctuary, and people on the live stream can't see people on Zoom, but you know what? We can see all of you, and we're all here together. We all come into our sanctuary tonight carrying different things. Some of us are feeling the global day yesterday of International Holocaust Remembrance Day. Others of us come in here today praying for healing for people whom we love. Still others are here carrying griefs, whether new or old. And some people just looking for a respite of Shabbat that comes once a week, a chance to refresh and renew. The good thing about being together in this space, whether it's there, here, or over there, we can hold all of these things together. Religion is about finding the fullness of the human condition, and we can be together no matter what it is that brings us in tonight. Let us welcome Shabbat now by lighting our Shabbat candles.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu lehadlik ner shel Shabbat.
I neglected to mention one of the main reasons that some people might be joining us tonight, which is that tonight, some families who are joining us on Zoom are joining us because they have the newest members of our Westchester Reform Temple community in their families. This evening, we will be offering a special blessing to new babies here in our Westchester Reform Temple community. And to sort of bridge the gap between low-tech and high-tech, I'm going to now go join them on Zoom in my office. And you're going to be left in the wonderful hands of Cantor Rodnizky to offer some very special, baby-appropriate Shabbat music. Even though these songs are intended for the youngest people, they can bring out the child in all of us. Cantor, would you take us away? And I'll see you all on Zoom in just 20 seconds.
Bim bam, bim 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 bam, bim 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 bam, bim bam, bim 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 bam, bim 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 bam. Shabbat shalom, Shabbat shalom, Shabbat 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 shalom, Shabbat shalom, hey Shabbat shalom, hey Shabbat 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 shalom. Shabbat, 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 Shalom, Shabbat, 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 Shalom, Shabbat, Shalom, hey, Shabbat, Shalom, hey, Shabbat, 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 Shalom, Shabbat, Shalom, Shabbat, Shalom, Shabbat, 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 Shalom. Bim bam, bim 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 bam, bim 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 bam, bim bam, bim 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 bam, bim 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 bam. Shabbat shalom, hey Shabbat shalom, Shabbat 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 shalom, Shabbat shalom, Shabbat shalom, Shabbat 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 shalom. Now, some of you, if you have siblings who are in the ECC, maybe you can show us on Zoom your beautiful hand motions that I know you know for this song. Ma yafeh hayom, how beautiful this day is, this day of Shabbat. Ma yafeh hayom, Shabbat shalom. Ma yafeh hayom, Shabbat shalom. Shabbat, Shabbat shalom. Shabbat, Shabbat shalom. Shabbat, Shabbat shalom. Shabbat shalom. Ma yafeh hayom. Shabbat shalom. Ma yafeh hayom. Shabbat shalom.
So a special Shabbat Shalom to our families who are welcoming or have welcomed new babies into our Westchester Reform Temple community. We are so glad that you're with us here tonight for Shabbat. I want to share a very brief story that comes from the Talmud, which is fitting when welcoming new babies, new people, new small humans into our community. Once, there was a person who was traveling along the road. He'd been walking for a very long time, and suddenly he came to a beautiful tree. And he walked over to the tree and he said, "My goodness, what a beautiful tree. Let me pick one of the apples and enjoy it by taking a bite." He said, "My goodness, what a beautiful tree. Let me lie down in its shade and have a little rest." And he said, "What a wonderful tree. Let me lean up against its trunk and feel myself supported by this firm, rooted tree." And after the traveler had enjoyed the fruit of the tree, enjoyed the shade of the tree, enjoyed leaning against the tree, he thought, "I want to do something special for this tree. I want to wish a blessing for this tree. Well, what can I possibly offer to a tree as a blessing? It already has beautiful fruit. It already has wonderful shade. It already has a firm trunk. What could I possibly offer by way of blessing to this tree?" And the traveler thought about it and he said, "You know what I offer for this tree? My blessing, my hope, my wish for you, tree, is that any seeds that should fall out of your branches and land in the ground, any saplings that will grow up around you, should be as blessed and as wonderful as you are. May all of the offspring trees, all of the trees that grow from you also have delicious fruit, and also provide comfortable shade, and also provide a firm trunk against which we can lean." He blessed that tree, saying, "May all the trees who come after you be as blessed as you are." And this, my friends, is the blessing that we want to offer tonight to all of the new babies, to all the families who are welcoming new babies in our Westchester Reform Temple community. We have already been so blessed by parents and by grandparents who make this community strong. And our only hope is that these new children who come into our world will continue to bless our community and bless our world in the way that you have, that they should be strong trees as you have been, as they continue to grow from year to year. Let us now offer to you and to our new babies the very special Parents' Prayer.
Here with you beside me, I feel so greatly blessed. This moment means much more than I can say. A time to be together, a time for us to rest. Shabbat is here, the time has come to celebrate the day. So I hold you close, your hands upon your head. And from me to you, my child, these words are said. Yesimcha Elohim ke'Ephraim v'chi Menashe. May God give you life and strength like Joseph's sons. Yesimech Elohim keSarah Rivka, Rachel v'Leah. May God make you like our mothers, like our blessed ones. As I watch you growing, I smile through my tears. Sometimes I wish you'd stay forever small. But then I see you blossom, and I befriend the passing years. I love you now, I love you then. I love to see it all, so I lift my voice to offer you this prayer. For every step along the road, I will be there. Yesimcha Elohim, ke'Ephraim v'chi Menashe. May God give you life and strength like Joseph's sons. Yesimech Elohim, Kesara Rivka, Rachel v'Leah. May God make you like our mothers, like our blessed ones. May God make you like our parents, like our blessed ones.
So to all of our babies and to all of our families, we're so glad you joined us. Shabbat Shalom. We hope that you'll continue to join us in the service and invite you to follow any one of the links that I just put into the chat where you can continue to stream the service. However, of course, we know that if it's getting close to bedtime and you're not able to stream with us, that's perfectly okay. I'll put the links in the chat one more time. Mazel tov families. We're so glad to welcome your new babies into our community. And everyone in the sanctuary, I'll see you in there soon. Shabbat Shalom, babies.
Shabbat Shalom. We continue in our service on page 146 with the Baruch Hu. Please rise. Yalla lai lai lai, 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 yalla lai lai lai. Am I awake? Am I prepared? Are you listening to my prayer? Can you hear my voice? Can you understand? Am I awake? Am I prepared? Baruch Hu et Adonai HaMevorach. Baruch Adonai HaMevorach le'olam va'ed, le'olam va'ed. Yalla lai lai lai, 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 yalla lai lai lai.
As we mentioned at the beginning of our service, yesterday was International Holocaust Remembrance Day, and I was reminded of a brief passage from Viktor Frankl's book, The Search for Meaning. Actually, this might be from his personal diary. I can't recall, but a passage from Viktor Frankl where he describes his experience of being in the camps. And evidently, he had brought with him to the camp a copy of a manuscript that he'd been working on his entire life, something that was like his entire life's work. And when he arrived, of course, at the camp, he was stripped of his clothing and lost the manuscript and was unable to recover it and felt really devastated by this. And he writes the following here in his memoir, I think it was. He says, "This was the case when I had to surrender my clothes, and This was the case when I had to surrender my clothes, and in turn, I inherited the worn-out rags of an inmate who had already come to the camp before me and had already been killed. And when I was looking for the pages of my manuscript, which I had lost when I gave up my clothes, I reached into the clothing of the former inmate and found in the pocket of the newly acquired coat one single page torn out of a Hebrew prayer book. And on that page was written the words of the Shema. And it was from this experience of losing my manuscript and finding the words of the Shema that I found the strength to get through at least just that day. My friends, the Shema has been a comfort to the Jewish people in times of sorrow and in times of joy. We turn to it together now on page 152.
Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad, Baruch Shem, Kevod Malchuto, Leolam Vaed.
We may be seated.
ואהבת את אדוני אלוהיך בכל לבבך ובכל נפשך ובכל מאודיך. והיו הדברים האלה אשר אנוכי מצווך היום על לבביך. ושיננתם לבניך, ודיברת בם, בשבתך בביתך, ובלכתך בדרך, ובשוכבך ובקומך, וקשרתם לאות על ידיך, והיו לטוטפות בין עיניך, וכתבתם על מזוזות ביתך ובשעריך, למען תזכרו ועשיתם את כל מצוותיי, והייתם קדושים לאלוהיכם. אני אדוני אלוהיכם, אשר הוצאתי אתכם מארץ מצרים, להיות לכם לאלוהים. אני אדוני אלוהיכם.
Page 158.
מי כמוך באלים אדוני, מי כמוך נדר בקודש, מי כמוך באלים אדוני, מי כמוך נדר בקודש. נורא תהילות אוסף אלה, נורא תהילות אוסף אלה, אדוני ימלוך לעולם ועד. מלכותך ראו בניך, בוקע ים לפני משה ומרים. זה אלי ענו ואמרו, זה אלי ענו ואמרו, אדוני ימלוך לעולם ועד. יאללה לי 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 ונאמר כי פדה אדוני את יעקב וגאלו מיד חזק ממנו. ברוך אתה אדוני גאל ישראל.
160.
השכיבנו אדוני אלוהינו לשלום. ופרוס עלינו, ופרוס עלינו סוכת שלומך, ופרוס עלינו סוכת שלומך. Shelter us beneath your wings, O Adonai. Guard us from all harmful things, O Adonai. Keep us safe throughout the night, till we wake with morning's light. Teach us, God, wrong from right. Amen. 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 Amen.
Page 164, please rise.
Adonai, Sefatai tiftach, Ufi yagid, Tehilatecha. Adonai, open up my lips, that my mouth may declare your praise. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu, ve'Elohei avoteinu ve'imotenu, Elohei Avraham, Elohei Yitzchak, ve'Elohei Yaakov, Elohei Sarah, Elohei Rivka, Elohei Rachel, ve'Elohei Leah, Ha'el Hagadol, Hagibor ve'Hanora, El Elyon, Gomel Chasadim Tovim, Ve'konei Hakol, Ve'zocher Chasdei Avot ve'imahot, U'mevii geula livnei v'neihem, Le'ma'an shemo be'ahava, Melech ozer u'moshia u'magen, Baruch atah Adonai, Magen Avraham ve'ezrat Sarah. Atah gibor le'olam Adonai, Mechayei hakol atah rav lehoshia, Mashiv haruach u'morid hagashem, Mechalkel chayim bechesed, Mechayei hakol berachamim rabim, Somech noflim ve'rofei cholim, U'matir asurim, U'mekayem emunato lishenei afar. Michamocha ba'al gevurot u'midom elach. Melech memit u'mechayeh u'matzmiach Yeshua. V'ne'eman atah lehachayot hakol. Baruch atah Adonai mechayeh hakol. Atah kadosh v'shimcha kadosh, u'kdoshim b'chol yom yehalelucha selah. Baruch atah Adonai ha'el hakadosh.
We invite you now to take a few moments for private reflection. You might look for words of inspiration in our prayer book or find the words of your heart. You can spend this time either standing or sitting.
עושה שלום במרומיו, הוא יעשה שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל, ואמרו אמן. עושה שלום במרומיו, הוא יעשה שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל, ואמרו אמן. יעשה שלום, יעשה שלום, שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל. יעשה שלום, יעשה שלום, שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל. יעשה שלום, יעשה שלום, שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל. יעשה שלום, יעשה שלום, שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל. יעשה שלום, יעשה שלום, שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל.
Shabbat Shalom. If you didn't have a chance on your way in the door to grab a copy of the little handout, I encourage you to do so. You might want it to follow along. On the other hand, if you don't want to follow along, I won't be offended. They are just outside the door on the left-hand side if you want one. So I recently spoke to a close friend of mine, someone I grew up with, who decided that he felt like his relationship with alcohol was getting to be a problem. And he decided that he wanted to get sober. And he made this decision actually a couple of months ago, like back around Thanksgiving, and we had a check-in call just this past week. And I was asking him how it's going, and he said that it's been a lot harder than he anticipated. That the original decision felt really good, like when he had this realization back in the fall that he wanted to get sober, it felt really, really good. But then the implementation of that decision has been very difficult. And it's sort of taken a lot of different other pieces being put into place in order for him to sort of find the support that he needs to follow through with the decision. And so he says, finally I've been able to get into an AA group. And finally I've been able to find a sponsor. And finally I've been starting to work through the very first few of the 12 steps. And some other things too that he's starting to put into place for himself about he said, I know that if I see a bar and want to go into the bar, that there's someone I'm going to call. And that's going to be my plan in case there's a temptation that I don't want to take. I have a plan in place. And I thought that there was some really good spiritual wisdom in all of the things that he said. Some wisdom that actually fits kind of appropriately with where we are exactly right now in this week's Torah portion. Last week, the Israelites had the amazing high experience of Mount Sinai. They received the 10 Commandments. They had a direct encounter with God, sort of like this big realization moment, like my friend realizing back in the fall that he wanted to get sober. And this week, they've started to come down from that peak experience, that big moment of revelation, and need to start to figure out, well, how are we going to follow through on all of the miraculous insights that we had just last week at Mount Sinai? And so we arrive at this week's Torah portion and find that, kind of like my friend, the Israelites have lots of little things that they need to do in order to fulfill the peak experience they'd had the week before. This week we're in Parshat Mishpatim, and if you take a look on our handout right now, here's the very first sentence of Parshat Mishpatim. This is the first box on your page. It says, these are the laws, the Mishpatim, that's where the Torah portion gets its name from. These are the laws that you shall set before them. And then the Torah portion goes on to list a whole bunch of laws. A certain Spanish medieval text called Sefer HaChinuch says that there are 53 commandments here in Parshat Mishpatim. 23 of them are things that you shall do. 30 of them are things that you shall not do. And then I've listed here kind of like a broad overview of the many different topics in Parshat Mishpatim. It is a long list. It's very specific. It's very detail-oriented. It's not an easy parsha to wrap your brain around. You kind of have to spend a long time looking at each and every bullet point and trying to make sense of what all of them are. Underneath that list of commandments, I've brought here just a little text which I think we're not going to dwell too much on. Maybe I'll let you read it on your own at home, saying that this Torah portion must reflect a certain period of Israelite history, a period where like the Israelites were already settled in the land. Anyway, you can read that one on your own at home. It's not pertinent to the point I want to make up here on the Bema at least. But the bottom text, at least on the front half of the page, is a little bit more about where I'd like us to go. So this is from the Midrash. It says, concerning the large number of rules, the large number of mishpatim. Think about it. If you're an Israelite, you're like, wait a minute. I didn't even take in law number 2, and now you're already on law number 12, and there's 53 of these to go. How am I supposed to take in these huge number of mishpatim in this Torah portion? Concerning the large number of rules, God said, I have given you many laws, but also much reward. There's something in our Jewish tradition that recognizes that having specifics, even though there may be many, even though they may be overwhelming, even though it may be a long laundry list and hard to wrap our brains all around, still, there's something important in there, what the text calls much reward, something spiritually wise about having many laws. Let's flip over to the back of the page and see if we can find out what that reward is. What's the wise thing? What's the spiritual insight that we gain by having all of these 53 laws after going to Mount Sinai? So also in this week's Torah portion, we read the following incident. That Moses read aloud to the Israelites assembled there the entire list of 53 laws. Moses took the record of the covenant and read it aloud to the people. 53 laws. Imagine sitting through it. You're probably right now feeling bored just listening to me talk. Imagine listening to Moses talk. 53 laws all on the spot. And what did the Israelites do? Instead of falling asleep, which would be understandable, instead it says the Israelites said, all that the Eternal One has spoken, and here's the key phrase, we will do and we will hear. And the rabbis over the sages have noticed that phrase, we will do and we will hear, and asked the following question. Well, aren't those verbs in the wrong order? Isn't it usually that you have to hear something and after you've heard it, then you can do it? Like, imagine your surprise if suddenly Karen Rodnitsky went to my office and got me a water bottle, and then she came back with the water bottle, and I was like, hey, could you get me a water bottle? That would be very strange. That was she will do, and then she will hear. It seems like the verbs are out of order. But nevertheless, the Israelites, in their response to Moses, after he gives them this laundry list of 53 commandments, what they say is, all that the Eternal One has spoken, we will do, and we will hear. The rabbis wonder about this strange phrase for many centuries. And finally, in the 1300s in Yemen, in a certain book called Midrash Hagadol, the following little parable comes about. It says, this is under enduring wisdom. Moses said to Israel, how can you let your doing precede your listening? It doesn't make any sense that doing comes before hearing. How can you let your doing precede your listening? Moses said to the Israelites. Does not the deed usually arise from learning what to do? Well, the Israelites answer and say back to Moses, we will do whatever we will hear from God. Whatever it is, we're going to do it. Thus, they took it upon themselves to observe the Torah even before they had heard it, but more importantly, after the ellipsis. From this also derives the saying, one whose works exceeds one's wisdom, such wisdom will endure. Someone who will do, someone whose works, someone who will do before they will hear, someone whose works exceed their wisdom, such their wisdom will endure. And again, for me, this reminds me of my friend who had this insight that he knew he had to make a change in his life, but it wasn't enough just to have an insight. He had to have a plan in place. He had to have some doing, not just some hearing. He had to have the 53 laws, not just the high experience of getting the 10 Commandments at Mount Sinai. In case none of what I've just said translated, let someone who's a more eloquent person than me try and make the case. And that more eloquent person is E.B. White. We might know E.B. White, of course, for writing Charlotte's Web, but he also was a great essayist, often writing in The New Yorker. And this is from E.B. White's an interview that he did with the Paris Review magazine. The interview was collected in a book in 2009. I actually don't know what year the actual interview took place because E.B. White had already died by 2009. But this is E.B. White on inspiration and on discipline. E.B. White writes the following. He's thinking about the artistic process here. There are two faces to discipline. If a person who writes feels like going to a zoo, she should by all means go to a zoo. She might even be lucky, as I once was, when I paid a call at the Bronx Zoo, my favorite zoo, at the Bronx Zoo and found myself attending the birth of twin fawns. It was a fine sight, and I lost no time writing a piece about it. Okay, that's the peak experience. E.B. White got lucky. He went to the zoo, he saw an amazing thing, the birth of twin fawns. That was a great high for him. But then he's got to figure out how to take that experience and turn it into writing, how to take the high and turn it into 53 sentences, if you will. Continuing the paragraph. The other face of discipline is that zoo or no zoo, diversion or no diversion. In my language, mountain peak experience or no mountain peak experience. In the end, a person must sit down and get the words on paper. And against great odds. This takes stamina and resolution. Having got them on paper, the writer must still have the discipline to discard them if they fail to measure up. She must view them with jaundiced eye and do the whole thing over as many times as is necessary to achieve excellence or as close to excellence as she can get. And that varies from as many times as one time to possibly 20. E.B. White, describing the difference between having a miraculous insight and then being able to turn it into a beautiful book. It takes practice. It takes sitting down day after day. It takes having a plan, just like the Israelites get a plan in this week's Torah portion for how they're going to enact the high experience they had on Mount Sinai just a week before. If E.B. White wasn't eloquent enough, let's put it in the mouth of Rabbi Hillel, who lived right at the turn of the Common Era. He died in the year 10 CE, so our era. Rabbi Hillel taught the following. He said, "Do not say, when I have free time, then I will study Torah. Don't say, when I have free time, I'll study Torah, because perhaps you'll never have free time." We got to have a plan in place. It's not enough to have a good intuition or a good, the road is paved with intentions. It's not enough just to have a good intention. It's not enough just to have a high experience. We also need to have a plan in place. And that, despite this week's Torah portion, Mishpatim being so dry and having 53 laws in it, is why it's still important. Because those 53 laws, as varied and as complex as they might be, are actually representative of a really deep spiritual insight, which is that if we want to achieve the things that we so desperately dream of and desire, we need to figure out what step 1 is going to be, and then step 2, and then step 3. That's why we have Shabbat every week, and not just have one high experience on Yom Kippur and then never see one another again for a whole year. Because we need little mile markers along the way to help us measure our progress and to help keep us on course. From this Shabbat to next Shabbat, may this be so for all of us. Shabbat Shalom. We'll turn our hearts now to people who are in need of healing. And if there's someone who you're praying for this Shabbat, someone who might feel good to know that you shared their name aloud with our community, if you'd like to rise and say their name in your place, you're invited to do so. This week, we as a... This week, Westchester Reform Temple is praying for healing for Zalman Pesach, for Liz Schubener, for Donna Pertula, Rosalind Miller, Grace Neidish, Avraham Feivel ben Michael, Herschel ben Sarah, Avraham ben Miriam, Yitzchak Halevi ben Shohim, Elizabeth Hars, Barbara Feldman, Tony and Gina Zalapa, Matthew Atwood, Stephen Bleckman, Ruth Weinfeld, Linda Byron Glucksman, Gloria Byron, Anthony and Elizabeth Denker, Mordechai Ben Yaakov, Deborah Kapnick, Nicole Shusi, Neil Glaskell, Leah Greenspan, Andrea Reiner, Masha Batsora, Aviva Tzila Bat Esther Bela, Jeffrey Millman, Ken Master, Chava Batsara, Eliyahu Chaim Ben Fradel, Sheila Fried, Molka Tzipora Bas Rachel, Tamar Bat Molka, Heschel Meir Ben Davida Chana, Sarah Haran, Blanche Silver, and other names that we carry with us in our hearts. Our prayer for healing can be found on page 371.
Leimor sing, and let us say, Amen. Misheberach imotenu mekor habracha lavotenu. Bless those in need of healing with refuah shalema, the renewal of body, the renewal of spirit, and let us say, Amen.
Our concluding prayers begin on page 586. Would the congregation please rise?
Let's see. Aleinu l'shaveach la'adon hakol, לתת גדולה ליוצר בראשית, שלא עשנו כגויי הארצות, ולא שמנו כמשפחות האדמה, שלא שם חלקנו כהם, וגורלנו ככל המונם, ואנחנו קוראים ומשתחווים ומודים לפני מלך מלכי המלכים, הקדוש ברוך הוא.
We may be seated.
ונאמר, והיה אדוני למלך על כל הארץ, ביום ההוא, ביום ההוא, יהיה אדוני אחד, ושמו, ושמו, ושמו אחד.
In honor of International Holocaust Remembrance Day, before we offer the words of Mourner's Kaddish, a reading on page 596. We have lived in numberless towns and villages, and in too many of them we have endured cruel suffering. Some we have forgotten, others are sealed in our memory, a wound that does not heal. 100 generations of victims and martyrs, and still their blood cries out from the earth. And so many at Dachau, at Buchenwald, at Babi Yar. What can we say? What can we do? How bear the unbearable or accept what life has brought to our people? All who are born must die, but how shall we compare the slow passage of time with the callous slaughter of the innocent cut off before their time? They lived with faith, not all, but many. And surely many died with faith in God, in life, in the goodness that even flames cannot destroy. May we find a way to the strength of that faith, that trust, that sure sense that life and soul endure beyond this body's death. They have left their lives to us. Let a million prayers rise whenever Jews worship. Let a million candles glow against the darkness of these unfinished lives. As we prepare to recite the words of the Mourner's Kaddish, I'd ask mourners in our midst to please rise and be acknowledged in the following order. If you've laid a loved one to rest within the past 7 days, would you please rise? If you're within the first 30 days of mourning your loved one, would you please rise? If you're within the first year of mourning your loved one, would you now rise? And if you're observing this Shabbat, the Yartzeit, the anniversary of your loved one's death, would you please rise? I'd ask the whole congregation to rise together as one in support of the mourners among us as we remember. We remember first those most recently taken from us: Theodore Ted Weinberg, husband of Audrey Weinberg and father of Blake Weinberg Vogel and Taylor Weinberg Rosen; Sidney Kahn, father of Lawrence Kahn; Jane Rittmaster, mother of Peter Rittmaster. William Foreman, uncle of Rabbi Sharon Foreman. Alan Krebs, uncle of Helene Getz and Elise Flagg. Randy Potak, wife of Michael Potak and mother of Jonathan Potak. Yvonne Gross, husband of Judy Gross. Stephen Leventhal, father of Josh Leventhal. Shirley Sundak, mother of Tracy Coburn. Angela Saba, mother of Stephen Saba. Michael Schulman, uncle of Mark Koch. Ellen Kaplan, mother of Michael Kaplan. Marcy Tretler, mother of Jonathan Tretler. Marvin Price, father of Ellen Rosenberg. Ronnie Spector, cousin of Michelle Smith and Benjamin Gendel. Stephen Silberfein, father of Scott Silberfein. Roberta Ross, mother of Seth Ross. Fred Gross, father of Adam Gross. And on their Yahrzeit, on the anniversaries of their death, we remember Sylvia Alderman, Joel Blank, Lily Blumberg, Robin Blumberg, Harry Levitt, Norman L. Bloomstein, Stuart Byron, Dorothy Chait, Theodore Colby, Ira Dabrow, Philip Dinoff, Harry Eckstein, Alan Feldman, William Finkelstein, Belle Finkelstein, Lillian Selznick, Leon Frankel, B. Walter Freeman, Stanley Goldman, Ruth Gottfried, Ava Hodis, Albert Hodis, Edward Horn, Mildred Jaffe, Rose Jareski, Sammy Catan, Erwin Kaufman, Debbie Leitner, Aaron Lichtenstein, Bernice Larinsky, Kenneth Mandel, Ethel Michael, Eleanor Nailett, Lillian Newman, Mike Oshinsky, Lena Pessin, Harriet Pitchen, Lilo Rothman, Anna Rublin, Cheryl Schulman, Rose Schwartz, Stanley Schwartz, Ethel Seiden, Barry Shapiro, Emmanuel Shemin, Sylvia Victor, Hilliard Volin, Renee Werner, Susan Weiner, Harold Yanowich, Lois Zitter, and other names that we carry with us in our hearts. If there's any name that I've not yet said aloud or any that I've inadvertently mispronounced, I invite you to say those names now. The words of the Mourner's Kaddish can be found on page 598. Yitgadal v'yitkadash shemei Rabbah, bi'almad divrach yirutei v'yamlich malchutei, b'chayachon uvyomechon uv'chayei d'chol beit Yisrael, ba'agala uv'yizman kariv v'imru amen. Yehei shemei Rabbah mevarach le'olam u'lomei amayah. Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitramam v'yitnaseh. V'yithadar v'yitale v'yithalal shemei dekudsha barichu. Le'ela min kol birchata v'shirata. Tush bechata v'nechemata. Da'amiran be'alma v'imru amen. Yehei shlama Rabbah min shemaya. V'chaim aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen. Oseh shalom b'mromav. Hu ya'aseh shalom. Aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen.
Oseh shalom b'mromav, hu ya'aseh shalom, aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen.
We may be seated. A few brief announcements before we conclude our service. Our observance of Shabbat doesn't end tonight, but continues rather into tomorrow with Torah study at 9 a.m. via Zoom and sharing Shabbat on Zoom only at 10:30 if you're one of our Sharing Shabbat families, or anyone rather who wants to join for our Sharing Shabbat service, 10:30 a.m. via Zoom. And also tomorrow afternoon at 5 p.m., we'll be celebrating the bar mitzvah of Josh Sherman here in the sanctuary. There's a lot coming up in the next week or so, but one highlight which I want to lift up is on Thursday, February 10th. So that's not this coming Thursday, it's the Thursday after that. On Thursday, February 10th, we have a really special presentation with none other than the amazing Ruth Messenger and also her partner Tamara Fish. Well, they'll be presenting critical race theory, what it is, what it isn't, and why it matters. Please come both to learn and also to bring your good questions. I'm sure that there are people who may have some hard questions for them, and I'm sure they'd love to hear them. Please join us on Thursday evening February 10th to meet with Ruth Messenger and Tamara Fish to discuss a little bit more about critical race theory, what it is, what it isn't, and why it matters. Why don't we conclude our service together with song, with the words of Oseh Shalom. We invite the congregation to please rise.
Oseh Shalom bimromav, hu yaseh shalom aleinu, ve'al kol Yisrael, ve'al kol yoshvei tevel, ve'imru Amen. Oseh Shalom, Oseh Shalom bimromav, hu yaseh shalom aleinu, ve'al kol Yisrael, ve'al kol yoshvei tevel, ve'imru Oseh Shalom bimromav, hu yaseh shalom aleinu, ve'al kol Yisrael, ve'al kol yoshvei tevel, ve'imru Amen. Ve'imru, ve'imru Amen.
Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom.